Welcome to Greg Ducharme Golf. I am Greg Ducharme, and this is your John Deere Classic preview. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to get you ready with some course stats, some key facts, some winning trends, and we'll also look at some comp courses. A lot of you have been asking me in the comments to provide some comparable courses each and every week, so we've added that right here into this episode. And of course, we're going to talk about players. There's a lot of players in this field who I'm very interested in, some of them in different categories. We're going to figure out why they're in this group and why I like them to perform well this week. You're going to leave this video with a lot of information on the John Deere Classic, and you'll be fully ready, fully prepared for the week. So thank you so much for watching. And if you like this kind of content and you want to continue to see it every single week, I put videos like this out every week, previewing each and every tournament. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. It really helps me out, and I very much appreciate it. But let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. We're going to start with some of the course facts. The John Deere Classic each and every year is played at TPC Deere Run. This is a pretty cool golf course in my opinion. It does yield quite a few birdies. You will see very low winning scores each and every year, but it is a par 71 measuring 7,327 yards. The greens are bent grass greens at 5,500 square feet, and they are expected to run about 12 on the stimp meter. The rough is a Kentucky bluegrass fescue mix. It's about 4 inches long. There haven't been very many changes to this golf course over the years, but this year there's one new addition. The fourth hole, which had a tree in the middle of the fairway, which was rather famous, was altered this year. They added about 30 yards. They had to move the tee box back, and they replaced that tree in the fairway with some fairway bunkers and a narrower fairway. So that's going to change the fourth hole a little bit. But ultimately, I think the theory and the concept behind TPC Deere Run and what it takes to be successful here remains largely consistent. So before we get into some of these stats, I just want to go through some of the winning scores to give you an idea of what this typically looks like. Brian Campbell won last year at 18 under par. It actually played a lot more difficult last year, which you'll see when we go into some of these winning stats. Then you had Davis Thompson in 2024. He won at 28 under par. That's more along the lines of what you expect when you think John Deere Classic. Sepp Straka was 21 under par when he won. So was JT Poston. Lucas Glover was 19 under par. There was no tournament in 2020 because of COVID. Dylan Fratelli in 2019 won at 21 under par. So you can expect a winning score in the 20s. Which means you got to be making, at the very least 5 birdies a day if you don't make any bogeys. So you're going to want to make some more birdies than that because there are bogeys out there. If you hit bad shots, you can be penalized and you can make bogeys. But ultimately, the golf course is so scoreable because of the time of year and the condition that creates. You typically see some humidity. You typically see lighter winds, beautiful summer days that are ideal for scoring conditions. And you can also see a lot of thunderstorms at night. That softens the golf course, makes it very receptive, and as a result, these guys make a ton of birdies. But that's not the only thing that leads to a lot of birdies. Take a look at some of these key stats here for the golf course. It gave up the 5th most birdies last year, and it had the 20th lowest bogey average rate. In 2024, it was the 10th lowest bogey average rate. And in years prior, it's had the fewest bogeys before, or second fewest bogeys before, if you're looking at it from an average perspective. Players tend to hit about 65% of the fairways and 70% of the greens. That's a very high clip. And they're hitting the ball about 299 yards or so on all drives. This is looking back since 2019. So all these numbers we're looking back about 6 years. It was last year, it was the 15th toughest golf course as far as scrambling is concerned. When we get to the trends, you'll see some correlation with around the green performance as well. It was top 25 in the top 25 toughest rough proximity over the last 6 years, sometimes even tougher than 25th. and it was in the top 20 easiest fairway proximities each of the last 6 years. So it's pretty important to find the fairway out here because you have a huge advantage being in the fairway versus being in the rough. Now, the fairways aren't difficult to hit. Like I said, players hit about 65% of the fairways. But it is a really big advantage to be playing from the fairway. And at some distances, it can be 15 to 18 feet. The average proximity difference between the rough and the fairway, that 4-inch Kentucky bluegrass is no joke, and you want to stay out of it as best you can. Look, it's not U.S. Open rough. It's not hack out. You're not going to see guys chipping out sideways because they're in the rough, but it does make it more difficult to hit the ball close to the hole. And when you got to make 25 birdies during the week, you want to spend as much time coming from the fairway as possible. Now, this is another important aspect. 73% of all approach shots come from inside of 200 yards. Okay, this is spread. This skews towards, I would say, mid to short irons primarily. So inside 100 yards, 11.5% of the approach shots come from there. 100 to 125, 13% of the approach shots come from there. 125 to 150, 15.6% in that range. And then you have just over 16% from 150 to 175 and 175 to 200. That makes up about 3/4 of all the approach shots on this golf course. So again, I'm looking at guys who can get the ball in the fairway and guys who can really hit it close quite often with these short and mid irons. It's actually very similar yardages coming into the greens as TPC River Highlands, which we saw last week. More on that in just a moment. Now I want to take a look at some of the winning trends, looking back at the last 6 winners here at the John Deere Classic. What does it actually take to win? What did these guys do during the week that separated themselves from the rest of the field? So here we go. 4 out of the last 6 winners finished top 15 in strokes gained off the tee. The last 6 winners, all 6 of them, were top 25 in driving accuracy. Again, pretty important there. The last 6 winners all hit 56 or more greens in regulation, which is about 77%. Remember, the field hits about 70%, so there's a pretty nice increase there from winners of about 7%. 4 out of the last 6 winners were top 11 in strokes gained around the green. That's what I was telling you about with the scrambling. It is a challenging scrambling course. All of those 6 winners were in the top 30 in strokes gained around the green. 4 of the last 6 winners were top 6 in strokes gained putting. All 6 were top 31. Again, this can really turn into a putting contest, and you see why here. The last 6 winners made 22 or more birdies, and they made 5 or fewer bogeys. So you definitely want to be playing from the fairway. You want to be taking advantage of so many of these holes have really shorter approach shots. And if you're coming from the fairway, you can hit it close and make a birdie, and you got to make a ton of them. So now this golf course, like I said, it reminds me of TPC River Highlands. Many of you have been asking in the comments to include comp courses in my preview videos. So I appreciate your comments first and foremost. Any feedback you have at any time, whether you think it's silly or not, put it in the comments. And if I like the idea, I'll start including them into these preview videos because I love doing this and I love your involvement. So keep it coming. Now, we are going to get into some comp courses here beyond just TPC River Highlands. That is an opinion. I have 3 course comps that are based strictly on data. But before we get to that, I want to take a look at course history here at the John Deere Classic at TPC Deere Run. So these are the 10 best players at TPC Deere Run over the last 5 years. But the thing is, they only have to have 1 start. And I wanted to include, I did 1 minimum start because the John Deere Classic has a lot of turnover in the field year over year. Players kind of graduate out of the John Deere Classic, if you will, which is unfortunate in some terms. But in others, it's great because we have a constant recycling of new up-and-coming talent, which is a good thing. So I really limited the minimum here, and I just wanted to see who's played the best, who's had great tournaments here. So these are your top 10 players. Brian Campbell, Davis Thompson, both winners here. Brian Campbell last year, Davis Thompson a couple years ago. Luke Clanton, Emiliano Grillo, Michael Thorbjornsen, Max Homa, Ben Griffin, Lucas Glover, a winner here as well. Brendan Todd and Denny McCarthy are your top 10 here at TPC Deere Run. Now, the comp courses, there are 3 of them. This is based purely on data. This is not opinion. Some of them may stand out. But all this is it's a look at the data of a correlation between the players who play well here and the players who play well at other golf courses on the PGA Tour. The first one is Silverado Resort, the North Course. That's where they played the Pro Tour. They won't this year. It's done now, but they have for years. I thought that was pretty interesting. My guess there is you got to drive it pretty straight at both golf courses, and they can both turn into a putting contest at times. And perhaps the proximity distances are similar, mostly inside of 200 yards. That's my best guess as to why that is. But the best players in this field at Silverado, top 10 best over the last 5 years, Jackson Koivun, Ricky Fowler, Ben Griffin, Max Homa, Ryo Hisatsune, Patrick Fishburne, Matt Kuchar, Rico Hoey, Johnny Kiefer, and Neil Shipley. Now, again, it's important to keep this in mind. As you're listening to these names and reading them here on the screen, just be paying attention. And all I'm doing when I go through this, I write down all these names, and I'm just looking for common players. Are there names that just keep on popping up? Right now, there's none that are really jumping off the page to me, but we're only through 2. I've got 9 of these things that we're going to go through, and we got 3 more golf courses to go to. So the next one is Vidanta, down at Vidanta World in Mexico. Again, this is another venue that's going to move to the fall this upcoming season, and it's a resort course. This surprised me to see this as a comp course to the John Deere Classic. Like Silverado, pretty tree line. Got to hit it pretty straight there. You don't have to hit it straight at all at Vedanta. But maybe this is why. Brian Campbell, first guy that came up at Vedanta because he won there, and he won at the John Deere Classic last year. Aldrich Potgieter, Tony Finau, Eric Cole, Joel Damon, Aaron Wise, Stephen Yeager, Ben Griffin, there he pops up again, Patrick Rogers, and Danny Walker. Now the last one you probably haven't seen on TV very much. It's an opposite field event. It's the dunes down there in Myrtle Beach, and that's where they play the One Flight Myrtle Beach Classic. So they've only hosted that event 3 times there, and the data's already picked up on some correlation. So look, I think, again, it's really important. You're not looking at these specifically, but this is the type that you're keeping in mind. So listen to the players. Again, see if there's any repeat offenders, if you will, because there are some, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Chris Gotterup, Mackenzie Hughes, Eric Cole, there he is again, Vedanta and the Dunes. Christian Bezuidenhout, Davis Thompson, Thorbjorn Olesen, Ben Griffin again, Kevin Yu, Kita Nakajima, and Bo Hostler. Okay, so those are your comp courses based on data. I am reminded of TPC River Highlands when I think of this golf course. Again, you have very similar grass types. They both have a bluegrass that's about 4 inches long in the rough, and it can be problematic. They're both shorter golf courses with, that 125 to 150 is a really key range, but primarily the approach shots come from inside of 200 yards. We see that at both venues. You have bent grass greens here at the John Deere Classic. They're bent and POA mixed at TPC River Highlands. And the greens they're very similar in size, 5,000 square feet at the Travelers and 5,500 square feet here. So very comparable. So just kind of based on feel, I included this golf course here just to see what we get. Now, you should also keep in mind, the Travelers has gone to a signature event. So the field looks very different than the field at the John Deere Classic. So just keep that in mind as well. We're only looking at players in this field this week for the John Deere Classic and all of these things that we go through. So the best players in this field at TPC River Highlands over the last 5 years. Again, you only got to have one start to qualify. Carson Young, Sung Yul No, Kevin Streelman, Keegan Bradley, Nick Hardy, Zach Blair, Bryce Garnett, Seamus Power, Tom Kim, and Martin Laird. So not a ton of crossover there between the three that the data says are the comp courses and this one, except Keegan Bradley kind of stands out to me, although there's really no crossover there. He didn't make any of the other lists. So right now, I basically, the guys that I have circled right now would only be Eric Cole. He's really the only guy jumping off the page to me at this point. There are some guys on the course history side here, like Emiliano Grillo, who I'm very interested in. That Ben Griffin, he would be another guy that stands out to me. But right now the list is very limited. So now what I want to do is get into some of the key stats for this golf course and just get an idea. Look, we talked about this last week for the Travelers as well. The key on Birdie Fest golf courses like this is iron play and putting. That combination is crucial for success when it comes to making birdies. In a U.S. Open, that stuff can be important, but it's totally different. Short game comes into play much more. Driving comes into play much more because bogey avoidance is really important. And so greens of regulation become really important. Where here on these golf courses, the guys are going to hit a lot of greens, but I'm looking for proximity numbers. Who can hit them really close? So I looked at the key numbers. I went from 50 to 125, 125 to 150, 150 to 175. Those three buckets, we figure out who the best players in the field in that area are, and we're going to get a really good idea of who the good course fit approach play players are. So, and then there's a couple of other stats we're going to get into as well, like driving accuracy, like birdie average, like bogey average, and strokes gained putting. Those are all coming up in just a moment here. So let's first go to 50 to 125. Again, this is a wedge range. There's an importance with wedges here, and 50 to 125 is the widest of any proximity bucket. It's going to give us an idea of who the best wedge players are, and these are some names that you're going to want to pay attention to. Some of them, they may not check any other box, but here's the list. We have Nick Dunlap, Pontus Nyholm, Jacob Bridgman. That catches my attention. Carson Young, Johnny Kiefer, Lucas Glover, winner here, David Lipsky, Marty Doe, Davis Thompson, winner here, and Vince Whaley. All right, so now looking at that list, Jacob Bridgman jumps off the page to me. He was in my video for the Travelers last week, didn't perform very well, but I think a lot of the same reasons hold true this week, and maybe worth going back to the well on Jacob Bridgman. Now let's take a look at 125 to 150. We have Davis Chatfield, Tom Kim. His name pops up again. Now I'm very interested in Tom Kim. Carl Phillips, Davis Thompson. Davis Thompson's been popping up quite a bit, and he is a winner here. Dylan Wu, Austin Eckroat, Sudarshan Yalamaraju. Okay, keep that one in mind. Eric Cole, there his name is again. Very interested. Chandler Blanchet and Jacob Bridgman again. Okay, now I'm starting to get a picture here. I'm seeing Bridgman multiple times. I'm seeing Davis Thompson multiple times. Eric Cole multiple times. These guys are catching my attention. Now we go to 150 to 175, and let's see what we get here. Kevin Streelman, Brian Campbell, winner here. Austin Eckroat, could be a good fit. He's interesting. Andrew Novak, Emiliano Grillo. Okay, again, he's in the course history bucket as well. Emiliano Grillo, catching my attention. Jacob Bridgman, again. Michael Thorbjornsen, Chris Gotterup, Daniel Berger, and Aldrich Potgieter. It's the second time his name has come up as well. So with all these guys that have come up multiple times, we're going to go and take a deeper look. We're going to say, all right, does this make sense? Is there any other reason? you don't want to be making decisions based on how guys perform from 125 to 150. It's just a nice thing to know when you find guys who are playing well, who have some pretty good iron statistics. Are they good at, do they have good strokes gained approach numbers because they are really good from 200 to 225? Or do they kind of fit into these categories as well? Again, it's also important to note more you don't have to be in the top 10 in order to be good. So there are more guys that are available here in all of these buckets. But it is a really nice place to start, and it can you start circling names and then you go do a little more research, which we're going to do here. Now again, like I said, driving accuracy is very important here. The recent winners here at TPC Deere Run performed very well in the driving accuracy category. So who are the best driving accuracy players in this field? Andrew Putnam, Lucas Glover, Kensei Hirata, Joel Damon, Emiliano Grillo, popping up again. Chandler Blanchet, popping up again. Max McGreevy, I love his game. David Lipsky, Ricky Fowler, his name's come up a few times, and Lee Hodges as well. Okay, so those are the guys that are really straight hitters, the 10 straightest hitters in this field, and Emiliano Grillo is the one that jumps out to me and says, hey, pick me, pick me. I keep coming up. I'm doing everything right. You got to pick me. Okay, let's move on. We got three more to get through. First, birdie average. Like I said, you got to make at least 22 birdies this week. Probably more like 25 in order to win. So who are the birdie makers in this field? Top 10 birdie makers in this field, Jacob Bridgman. He keeps popping up. David Lipsky. Sudarshan Yelamaraju. Again, very interesting. Pearson Coody. Ryo Hisatsune. Blades Brown. Chris Gotterup. Daniel Berger. Max Grazerman. And Austin Smotherman. All right, not only do you have to make a ton of birdies here in order to win, but you can't make very many bogeys. Really, more than one a day can be costly. The last 6 winners have made 5 or fewer bogeys. So who are the best at avoiding bogeys in this field? This is the top 10 players with the lowest bogey average on tour this year in this field. Jacob Bridgman, Blades Brown. Okay, here we go. These guys are starting to pop up quite a bit. Ricky Fowler. Michael Thorbjornsen, Sudarshan Yelamaraju again, Chris Ventura, Jordan Spieth. Yes, Jordan Spieth is playing this week. I'm really excited to see how that turns out. Jimmy Stanger, love his game. Chris Gotterup, and Daniel Berger. All right, so that gives you a pretty good idea of the guys who are really strong scorers, where they could perform. Last thing, we have not covered this at all. That would be putting. Like I said, you're talking about a birdie contest. You need to perform on the greens, and ultimately this will be separated on the putting greens. It's the hardest area to predict, so I save it for last, but this is kind of a wide range. Now, I'll explain this to you first here. And anytime we go and identify one of these players, we're going to look at their recent putting stats, and we're going to try to find out if they're putting well right now. Is there a likelihood that they're going to perform well on the greens this week at TPC Deere Run? But this is a really good starting point because it tells you who the best putters are in this field for the year. So we take a wide range, who are the good putters, and then we're going to narrow it down and we're going to look at the guys who are putting well right now. But we're not making any decisions based just on putting. I'm not a big fan of endorsing players who only perform well on the greens. You need a lot more than that because putting can be flimsy. But I do want players who are good putters or who are putting very well right now. So let's take a look at the 10 best players in this field in strokes gained putting for 2026. There we go again, Jacob Bridgman. Not only has he been on a number of these boards lately, he's been first on the last 3. So you bet when we go to the players that I like this week, Jacob Bridgman's going to be there. Vince Whaley, Matt Kuchar, Matthew Pavone, Chad Ramey, Bo Hostler, Carl Phillips, Sudarshan Yelamaraju, Ricky Fowler, and A.J. Ewert. Okay, so we got quite a list here. we got a lot of players. I think we just named about 150 players, some of them repeat offenders. But now the next thing that we do is go and dive in and take a look at exactly how these guys are playing at a much more detailed level. And we're going to sort through the guys that I really like. So first place I start is Keith Mitchell. Now, you didn't hear his name a lot in any of those. I promise you, most of these guys did come from those lists that we just went through. But Keith Mitchell he should really be one of the favorites this week. His play has been spectacular. He came in tied 4th at the U.S. Open and tied 22nd last week at the Travelers. He is an elite driver of the golf ball, and his iron play has been outstanding lately. He's gained over a shot in each of his last 5 events approaching the green, and he gains over a shot off the tee every single week. He has gained more than a shot every week since the Cadillac Championship, which took place back in May, early May, mind you. Now, if there's a concern with Keith Mitchell, it's his putting. And his short game can be problematic. But he made a putter switch not long ago, and it's really helped him. In each of his last 2 events, he's gained strokes putting. You're talking about 4 out of his last 6 events. He's beaten the field with the putter. I think that's really impressive, and I think it's a reason why you see a 5th place finish from him at the CJ Cup and a 4th place finish at Shinnecock. They're very different golf courses, even though Wyndham Clark won at both of them. But at the CJ Cup, you got to putt really well. It's very important. At the U.S. Open, you had to putt really well, too. They were just for par. They weren't for birdie nearly as much. So I do believe that Keith Mitchell has found something on the greens. You pair that with his tee to green ability, and you got a superstar in the making here. So I love starting with Keith Mitchell. He's got to be on your list. Next, we're going to go to Emiliano Grillo. This is a player who you heard his name pop up a number of times. He was on the course history list. He was on the 150 to 175 list and the driving accuracy list. He is 10th on the PGA Tour this year in driving accuracy, 40th from 125 to 150, and 31st from 150 to 175. This is an area that he excels in. And, looking at what Grillo has done, much like Keith Mitchell, his driving has been very stout lately. He has gained strokes to the field in every event since the Valero Texas Open, which was in April. So every event since May, he's beaten the field off the tee. And in that same span, he's only lost strokes approaching the green twice, and both of them less than a full shot for the week. So his performance with his iron play has been very strong. Now you take a look at what he does on the greens, and he struggles generally. But in his last 2 events, he's gained strokes putting. Tells me that he's figuring something out on the greens. What were those 2 events? RBC Canadian Open, he finished tied 20th. U.S. Open, he finished tied 23rd. You have at the Canadian Open very similar green surfaces, bent grass greens as well. You had the POA at the U.S. Open. Totally different circumstance, but impressive for him to be able to perform on the greens there. So I love Emiliano Grillo. He checks a lot of boxes as well. Next, let's go to Eric Cole. We went to Eric Cole last week for the Travelers Championship. He was in my video last week as well, and the same reasons apply. Look, he had the lead after 18 holes. He was in the mix after 36 holes and even after 54 holes. And Sunday was not a great day for Eric Cole, so he finished tied 38th. But he put himself in the mix, and he was in the mix all week. Unfortunately, he lost it with the flat stick, but that's very uncommon. And I would say he was due for a poor round on the greens. It does not come as a surprise at all to me. Here's why I like him this week. Number one, he popped up in a lot of our categories. Okay, he popped up in the course comps at Vedanta and the Dunes. He popped up in the 125 to 150 category. He's 5th on tour from 125 to 150, as a matter of fact. He's 53rd from 150 to 175, and he's 10th from 175 to 200. So inside of 200 yards, Eric Cole excels. It's reflected in his strokes gain metrics as well. in 6 out of his last 7 events. Okay, that's going all the way back to the Texas Children's Houston Open. He's only lost strokes approaching the green in one of those events, and it was at the Canadian Open, where driving was really important, and it was a longer golf course, really long par fours. This golf course, and what we saw last week, give him short approaches into the greens. The Charles Schwab Challenge, where he finished second, gives you short approaches into the greens. That's where Eric Cole excels. Now, what about the birdie fest aspect? Can he make enough birdies? Yes, because he's a wonderful putter, one of the best on the PGA Tour. In fact, he's gained over 2 strokes putting every event except one since the Texas Children's Houston Open, which was in March. So you're talking about, what, 7? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of his last 8 events. He's gained over 2 strokes putting. He's a world-class putter. He's got to be on your list this week. I think Eric Cole would have a really good chance of winning this golf tournament. Speaking of great putters, Jacob Bridgman checks that box as well. And looking at the stats that we just went through, Jacob Bridgman checks a lot of boxes as well. 50 to 125, 125 to 150, 150 to 175, birdie average, bogey average, and putting. Nearly every single category, with the exception of driving accuracy and the course comps. And he's a really young player on the PGA Tour. He just doesn't have the experience on any of those other golf courses to really fit the bill. And he did play at the Travelers last week and finished tied 47th, but he lost 2 strokes putting. But before that, he had gained 3 or 4 strokes putting in the 2 previous events in Canada and at the U.S. Open. And in 2 out of his last 3, he's gained strokes approaching the green. I thought last week was going to be a great opportunity for him. He didn't deliver, but for the same reasons I liked him last week, I like him again this week. And I do believe that this time he will deliver. So we're going to give him another chance. He just checks too many boxes to ignore Jacob Bridgman because he didn't perform his best in a signature event. Anyway, let's move on to a player I think will be very popular this week, and that's Ben Griffin. I'm very interested in Ben Griffin this week. The play for him has really started to turn around. It was a slow start to the year for him, but these recent finishes have been much better, going all the way back to just after the Masters. Tied 10th at the Zurich Classic, 3rd at the Cadillac Championship, 63rd at the Truist, not great, 14th, T14 at the PGA Championship, T3 at the Charles Schwab Challenge as the defending champion. He missed the cut at the Memorial, tied 17th at the U.S. Open, tied 10th last week. The finishing positions for Ben Griffin have really started to improve, and I think the reason for that is what he's done on the greens. So since that stretch at the RBC Canadian Open, he's gained at least 3 shots put in 5 out of the last 7 events. So the putter has gotten hot for Ben Griffin. That's very important this week. He's also gained strokes approaching the green in his last 4 events. And looking back through the rest of his season, there weren't even 4 events total where he gained strokes approaching the green before that. So the downturn really came from poor approach play. Now that's coming back. Now you're seeing the finishing positions come back, putting to go along with it. I got to love Ben Griffin. He's also on this list, on the course history list, the Silverado list, the Vedanta World list, and the Dunes Club list as well. So he checks all the course history boxes. And looking at his recent form, he checks the statistical boxes for me as well. Now, think about what happened at the Mexico Open last year. Brian Campbell won. Brian Campbell won here at the John Deere Classic as well. Well, in Mexico, he beat Aldrich Potgieter in a playoff. And Aldrich Potgieter is not the kind of guy I would normally think would succeed at the John Deere Classic. He's the longest hitter on the PGA Tour. I would not consider this a bomber's paradise at all. But don't allow driving distance to become a detractor. Just because you hit it long doesn't mean a short course is bad news for you. It can minimize your advantage. But at the same time, you can club down and hit shorter clubs into the greens from the same spots. It's always an advantage. The question is, do you lean on your distance, or is distance just a part of your game? I think when you look at a player like Rory McIlroy, distance is just a part of his game. He doesn't lean on it. You look at Gary Woodland, he doesn't lean on his distance. There are other aspects that help them on shorter golf courses perform really well, even when drivers taken out of their hands. I feel that is coming around for Aldrich Potgieter, to my surprise. He's gained at least a stroke approaching the green in 3 out of his last 4. Okay, so now we're talking about everything but the driver. He's gained strokes around the green in his last 2, and in 4 out of his last 5 events, he's gained strokes putting. This was a huge problem for Aldrich Potgieter earlier in the year. Again, there are only about 4 events to start the year where he did gain strokes putting, and they were not over a shot. But he gained 4.3 strokes at the RBC Canadian Open last time we saw him play. He gained over 2 strokes at the RBC Heritage, over a shot at the Cadillac Championship. This guy made a putter switch. He went from a blade to a mallet, and it's working immediately for Aldrich Potgieter. So today, even though he doesn't really check any of the other boxes that we've gone through, I'm looking at his recent putting performance, the upside his game carries in this field. I think Aldrich Potgieter has a real chance to win this tournament, especially considering how well he played at Vedanta last year. Now, that one makes a lot more sense. But like I said, I think Aldrich Potgieter comes into this John Deere Classic with a lot more game than he had last year. So very excited to see how that plays out for him. Now, a value play for sure, A.J. Ewart. A.J. Ewart is really playing some solid golf. He's finished tied 29th at the RBC Canadian Open. He is Canadian, by the way. Tied 17th at the Charles Schwab Challenge. Tied 19th at the Byron Nelson. He did miss the cut at Myrtle Beach, which is one of our comp courses. I don't love that. But he finished tied 20th at the Zurich Classic in the team event, tied 30th at the Valero Texas Open, and tied 11th at the Valspar Championship as well. So he's starting to really, tied 13th at the Cognizant Classic, really starting to put together some better finishes, more impressive finishes. And a lot of his work has come from the putter, which has been great. He's gained over 3 strokes putting in each of his last 3 events. He's gained strokes around the green, at least a full shot and a half around the green in 3 out of his last 4. And now you're starting to see the ball striking catch up a little bit. Gained a shot and a half at the Charles Schwab Challenge. And then at the RBC Canadian Open, he gained nearly 3 strokes approaching the green as well. So the game's starting to fill out. The ball striking is starting to come around. A little worried about his off the tee game, but he's got to figure out a way to hit some fairways. When he does that, he could get himself right in the mix. So he's kind of a long shot value play that I have my eye on this week. Now, there are 2 more players that I want to talk to you about today. And this is a really cool aspect about the John Deere Classic. It's in this time of year where the college players are done with their seasons. Many of the seniors are turning professional. And you've seen players through sponsor exemptions here at the John Deere earn their PGA Tour card. I think of Bryson DeChambeau and Jordan Spieth. Legends of the game now, at one point were non-members on the PGA Tour. And the John Deere Classic is really how they got their start. There are 2 players in the field this week where I see a similar situation brewing. One of them is Jackson Koivun, who's making his professional debut this week. This player won just about every award you could possibly win in college. Far too many awards for me to name right now. So I'm going to leave that aside. You can go look it up because it's a spectacular record. But Jackson Koivun is a serious contender this week. He has been a serious contender in PGA Tour events as well. He finished tied 23rd at the U.S. Open, which I believe was tied for low amateur. But a very strong performance from him there. The PGA Tour event he played in before that was the Procore Championship Oh, by the way, that's one of our comp courses that was at Silverado. He finished tied fourth there, tied fifth at the Wyndham, tied sixth at the ISCO, tied 11th last year at the John Deere Classic. So this is a college player who's just turning professional, and he has finished top 25 in his last 5 PGA Tour events. And now he comes back to the John Deere Classic where he finished tied 11th last year. Jackson Koivun could win this tournament. Don't forget about him. Really exciting up-and-coming player who, unfortunately, he's going to be one of those guys that just phases his way out of the John Deere Classic because he's going to be just that good. The other guy I want to keep in mind here is Blades Brown. Blades Brown played, he's earned special temporary membership on the PGA Tour. Even though he's younger than he's only 19 years old. He's younger than Jackson Koivun, but he's a very impressive player. So he's playing Korn Ferry Tour and PGA Tour. Last time he was on the PGA Tour was the CJ Cup Byron Nelson. He finished tied 14th. Before that, he played in Myrtle Beach at the Dunes Golf and Beach Club, one of our comp courses. He finished tied 9th there. Tied 26th at the Zurich Classic, although I forget who his partner was. And he came in third earlier this year at the Puerto Rico Open. So every time he steps up in a PGA Tour event, he delivers. He almost performs better on the PGA Tour than he does on the Korn Ferry Tour, which I find to be very interesting. And I'm wondering if Blades Brown is going to be the next Jordan Spieth or Bryson DeChambeau to come out of the John Deere Classic with a signature moment defining the rest of their career right here at TPC Deere Run. I think it's possible. But hey, let me know your thoughts. If you have any questions about the John Deere Classic, let me know right here in the comments. If you have any suggestions, any feedback, like many of you have given me in the last couple of videos that I've done, again, let me know in the comments. I'll look into anything that you suggest. And we'll see if it's a feasible idea or if it's a good idea. Some of you actually, believe it or not, have good ideas. Some of you don't. Okay, so if I don't get back to you, hey, don't take offense to it. I will get back to you. If I don't implement the idea, please don't take offense. We got a lot of people to please here. But that's what we have here for you in the John Deere Classic preview. I appreciate all you watching. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button as we're just getting this channel going. I really want to keep doing these each and every week, and I plan to, but I need your support like you've done a great job of so far. So again, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment in the comment section, like the video. You know what to do, whatever else you're supposed to do. Help me out here. Hey, I'm Greg Ducharme. That's all we have for you here on Greg Ducharme Golf Today. We'll see you again next time.